Okay, thank you. Okay. Hello, everyone. I think it's probably a good time to begin. I had some technical difficulties getting in line. We live in a forest area, and sometimes due to weather, we get some, rough internet connection. So sometimes it could fluctuate. So it was fluctuating a bit this morning, but I'm here. So once again, my name is Naomi. Hello to everyone. My name is Naomi, and I am here in Canada right now, and I'm very glad to once again have the opportunity to be here today. This is our third day of me being here with you to share in the book Jivan Vidya, an Introduction, and it's written by A. Nagraj, and it's translated by Rakesh Gupta. So we're going to continue today with our reading and continue with a little bit of sharing commentary in between. And then tomorrow will be my final day where I will be here. But we will continue for a few days after that with Kevin Brother, who lives in Germany. He will continue with the final section of the book Jivan Vidya, an Introduction. So I wish everyone a great morning. I'm glad that, or evening, wherever you are, and I'm glad you can be here with me. So let us begin. So we're beginning right now. See, this document that I have is a little bit of fluctuation in terms of the pages. So I hope this is, it should be page 83. Okay, so Jivan Vidya, an introduction. We're on the section of the book, The Constitution of Jivan. Jivan starts, so we're at the part where it says Jivan starts evidencing, just to give people the cue. Jivan starts evidencing the two activities of taste, which is asvadan, and selection, chayan, of man from the childhood itself. Analysis, vishleshan, takes place in vritti, but the perspective of deliberation, tulan, remains to be like, health, and profit. Just one moment, I have to. One of the activities of chit, the visualization, chitran, we do anyway. Human being with these has been able to visualize and accomplish the objects of their needs and aspiration. Idealism presented the imaginations of what is good for human being in many ways, but it failed to bring about orderliness through faith. Luxury and possession were established as worthwhile goals through materialistic education, inciting obsessive pursuit for sex, profit, and consumption. Still, the universal access to luxury and possession could not be accomplished. We kept thinking that material accomplishments signify human superiority over nature. We kept thinking that it is these things which define a human being. We kept thinking that these are human beings' rightful due after all the struggle and exploitation they'd gone through. It is laughable and pitiable at the same time. How did we conclude that we have already achieved the full human potential? How did we conclude that we have understood human being completely? This requires rethinking. Medical sciences only study the structure and function of human body, but their claim is that they study human being. Just think, is it possible to study a human being by dissecting and counting their muscles and bones? Even in a live person, is the study of human being possible by examining their eyes, their ears, etc.? In this way, our prevalent tradition forces us to carry a burden of lies. We boast of having studied human being, but actually we have not. We haven't studied the nature, but we boast of ruling over it. In this way, the human race has become buried under the burden of their own lies. Now there are only two options. Either we pull ourselves out or we perish underneath this burden of lies. I'll just stop there for a moment just because we're just getting started here this morning. So in general, over the past few days, what we've been looking at is we're trying to have a deeper study about the Jivan activities. And what we've been exploring with A. Nagaraji here through this book is that human beings are living with our minimal potential, and we are living in purview of 4.5 activities. But there are another 5.5 activities that we haven't been able to even recognize. And what's happening is we recognize ourselves as a body, and that itself is delusion, and that brings also all sorts of pain and struggling, and it has a whole has a whole series of outcomes. Okay, and if we recognize ourselves, identify ourselves as Jivan, then that's a whole different set of outcomes, because now I'm able to recognize that there are 10 activities that represent Jivan, and all of those activities are complete in of themselves, and I need to complete those activities and then evidence them. And then we can feel a sense of fulfillment. And at the same time, as soon as we recognize that identity of Jivan, we're able to participate in orderliness, which is an innate want of a human being. So what Nagaraja is trying to say here is that right now, human beings, the trend in the society, which is from the beginning of time until now, is that we try to locate everything happening in the body. And you can see the whole trend in science as well. They're trying to do all sorts of discoveries to figure out where is happiness happening, which part of the brain. So everything they're trying to locate in the brain. And I mean, that makes sense because human beings, we've assumed ourselves to be a body. So we also have these, these experiences or feelings or glimpse of happiness or a little glimpse of trust. So even all of those things we try to impart into the body because we don't know where else to locate it unless you're able to identify yourself as a Jivan. So even, again, I've worked in the school system for a long time, and nowadays the discussion around brain and brain learning is very, very dominating. So teachers are having a lot of discussions with children about brain. And so even if a child is thinking or imagining something, their teachers are attributing that to be happening. Okay, where's that happening? That's happening in our brain, and we need to develop our brain so we can imagine more. So, and that's just our own inability to recognize myself as Jivan. And so, we're trying to locate justice where it cannot be located, and that itself is delusion. Trying to see things where, trying to see myself in a body, but that is not the reality. So that itself is suffering, and it's delusion. And you cannot understand it in that way because we are not a machine. Jivan is not a machine. And of course, as Nagaraji was saying, we're living in a more mechanistic way of living right now, machine-based living. And because of that, we assume we can trace everything back to the brain and the body. But ultimately, what we are talking about here is a paradigm shift, because we're seeing the activities of Jivan, and that cannot be located in the body. Okay. And so when we're living in purview of deliberating based on senses, body, and profit, it leads to an obsessive pursuit of sensory pleasure, of consumerism, and of profit. And those three things you can see are very dominating kind of three pillars of how our society is currently based and the crux of how the society is moving. So the crux of the problem is that we haven't understood human being. We haven't studied human being properly. And so this is a proposal where we can study human being in its entirety. So let's move forward. They say that destiny corrects its own course. Nature will create circumstances which will make human life impossible when their excesses to environment cross the limits. We hear the clamor about climate change. They have already calculated how many will survive and how many will perish. Some nations think that their citizens should survive. All others may perish. Some religions think their believers should survive. They claim that their God is the only savior. So all making such claims. My view on this issue is faith and religion have completely lost their way. The seats of religion do not have any basis for universality. They don't have the vision for religion of all human beings. And these seats have nothing to offer for education, nor do they produce any real-life evidences. In the same way, the state doesn't have the concept of nation. They kept saying that we need to work for saving the nation. What will you do for that? The answer comes. We will struggle. Struggle is all about conflict, revolt, exploitation, and war. Who prepares the material for struggle, nature, or human being? When this was studied, it was found that it is human being alone who prepares material for struggle due to their delusion. These two seats, religion and state, have all the resources and all the power at their command, but they both are devoid of any content. There is no need to mention the seats of commerce, which is ever ready to exploit for the sake of profit. The seat of education doesn't have any vision for showing the way to definite and universal aim of human being. Now, what should common men do? One who is not going to get any guidance from these seats of religion, state, commerce, or education. Now, the courageous thing to do will be to discover or construct a new path. The path will be of right understanding, honesty, responsibility, and participation. The path of violence will not take us anywhere. Human beings cannot fulfill their needs with violence. Still, violence is a part of our tradition. Isn't that a big delusion? Now the way out is in achieving the right understanding. The verification of understanding happens in one's own self by study of developed consciousness. You cannot become wise by examining me. You will become wise only when you examine yourself. I kept examining others for 30 years of my life, but I didn't find an iota of understanding anywhere. I found the right understanding when I examined myself after my sadhana of 25 years. I want to hand over that understanding to humankind by way of education. We'll just, this effort too is part of that exercise. So let's just stop there for just one moment. So what Nagaraj is saying is, in order to get out of this whole cycle of lack of system, lack of directionality, lack of results that we ultimately want to see in the society and in terms of the earth, there's a necessity to discover a new path, and a new path that has definite results. Because right now, the results that we're attaining, whether it be on a personal level, in the family level, in the society level, all the way up to the environmental level, it's not acceptable to us. But at the same time, we don't have a definite direction. We don't have a definite vision, a definite purpose, or a definite collective aim as humanity. We haven't recognized that. So we're getting indefinite results also. So we need to have a definite path. And for that, it requires four things. He was saying understanding, honesty, responsibility, and participation. So I want to stop for a minute and just discuss those, because I think those are four fundamental points. Understanding means I understand the reality as it is. And that means three things which we've talked about several times, which is knowledge, wisdom, and science. Once again, knowledge is of three things: knowledge of coexistence, knowledge of jivan, and knowledge of definite conduct. Those three things are the domain of knowing. Okay? And that's knowledge. Then wisdom is, now I set my aim according to that. Now I understand there's a coexistence, there's a jivan, there's a definite conduct. I need to recognize that there's a definite aim, there's a definite purpose, undivided society, universal orderliness, and how now I can set my life with that aim of resolution, prosperity, fearlessness, and coexistence. It's a very definite aim, and all human beings can recognize that aim and set our living accordingly. And then the how is related to the science, now the direction, how we can make that happen, a definite path to make it happen. So that's understanding, okay? And that is now free from more or less, it's very definite. Based on that, once we have understanding, then we can attain honesty, which is now based on that understanding, I make decisions and I align my living based on those three, okay? And then as a result of that, we can say I can become a responsible human being. I'm living with responsibility when I have acceptance for my duties and responsibilities. Because now I see that there's a system, there's a coexistence, there's an overall universal purpose, and there's also a definite aim. And so for that, I recognize my relationships. I recognize my relationships for participating in system. And so for that, there's very definite duties and responsibilities. And I've accepted my duties and responsibilities for participating in a system. And the last step is participation. Now that I've recognized relationships no longer for senses and for trying to move towards sensitivity-based living, I'm recognizing my relationships for participating in system. Now we can actually participate, which means we can fulfill those duties and responsibilities, and we can participate together in the system. So that what A. Nagarji is saying is that that's a new definite path for humanity, where now we don't have to use violence or try to fix one problem with another problem. But if we can establish that within every human being, that's a paradigm shift, and that will lead to fundamentally different results. And those results will now be more acceptable to all human beings. And so what's a beautiful thing is A. Nagarji is saying that I want to hand over this understanding to humankind by way of education. So what I have come to see is that if you align your living, or actually maybe I'll wait a minute for that, but essentially he wants to hand that over, this over to humanity. And I would say that this is the most important task right now of our times, is to hand over this proposal through the education system to pass this on to humankind. And that is now in our hands to take this proposal and to offer it as a gift to society through education. I'll just read one other small part because I meant to read it, but I left it out before we move on to our next part. So this effort too is part of that exercise. It must have become indicated to you by now that coexistence itself is the ultimate truth. Living in the coexistential orderliness itself is our ultimate religion. If this is understood, then all necessary understanding for it is imminent. It is very easy. According to me, lying is difficult, and it is easy to live truthfully. I have verified it by living. This living was very difficult when I was surrounded with questions. When I found resolution, I became free from all questions, and my life became easy. If you also fulfill this right, then it will only strengthen my resolve. Those with me have verified it, and you can also verify it if you want. So what I want to just mention here is that, now in the society, the way that we live, you often hear people say that life is a struggle, it's hard, it's difficult. And we've made that because of the complexity, because of an ability to recognize Jivan as my identity, and an ability to recognize the coexistence and recognize a definite conduct. In our own inability, we've created this life that is based on struggle and difficulties. But if you align your living with the coexistence, then you experience something very different. You see that life is joyful. Life is a celebration. And A. Nagaraj used to say, he would always say that in Hindi, Jivan hi nitya utsav. Jivan is continuous celebration. So then now we identify ourselves as a Jivan, and we see that there's a definite coexistence, and I can participate in that coexistence. Now life becomes a continuous source of celebration. And now, instead of feeling a sense of helplessness, you feel a sense of hopefulness, and you see the beauty and the existential design, and then you can start to feel a sense of trust that I too can participate in it. And so this is this education is very necessary for us to hand over now to the next generation. And it's beautiful to be part of this process. So let's continue further. The verification of this proposal begins from deliberating upon justice in our behavior. It is about scrutinizing ourselves on whether we have understood our relationships. Are we fulfilling what is to be expected of us in these relationships? Can we do evaluation of the inherent values in these relationships? Do we reach the point of mutual fulfillment or not in these relationships? Once we begin this scrutiny, we discover that there's no definiteness in this perspective of like, health, and profit. That which I like, you may not like. That which is healthy for me may not be healthy for you. The amount of profit that is sufficient for you may not be sufficient for me. All human beings are stuck there. Like health, and profit perspectives of deliberation cannot have the basis of seeing equality among human beings. What should we do to become free from this trap? The deliberation with justice, dharma, and truth perspectives is also there, which can supersede the deliberation with like, health, and profit perspectives. It is when we begin using the perspective of justice, the contemplation, chintan, happens in Jivan. Justice is understood only upon our recognizing purpose in our relationships. Once we've understood a relationship for its purpose, it results in the flow of values, evaluation, and mutual fulfillment. Justice is that which can satisfy both sides in a balanced way. It is not justice if both sides are not satisfied. I am asked what we should do with the criminals. My answer is that person committed crime because we failed to make him wise. Why talk of justice only when it comes to criminals? Why don't we talk of justice in our relationships with so many people who don't commit any crimes, who we don't have any problems with, where we do mutual evaluation and we find mutual fulfillment? How can we overlook that? This is evident right before you. Now, the only question is whether you need it or not. In my view, all human beings have been waiting for this very understanding. The only difference between you and me is that I have taken one more step in this direction out of my own pain. I have accomplished this understanding, which I'm capable of testifying. Once you understand it, you will also testify the same thing. There is immense happiness and fulfillment in the state of understanding. All human beings will become capable of testifying their happiness and fulfillment upon attaining the right understanding. Where will this understanding be found? This understanding shall be provisioned academically in educational institutions. What is an educational institution? It is a combined expression of all parents and guardians. Education is an act of evidencing the right understanding. Until one evidences the right understanding, one cannot teach. Every educational institution, every parent, every guardian of a child is responsible for imparting the right education. Every family is a practice ground for education. It is no use thinking centralization, privatization, or nationalization of education. We need to directly recognize parents and guardians as the educational institutions. That is the design of education based on the right understanding, which alone will prove beneficial for humankind. So what part of the crux of this proposal is that now for the first time, we are able to do deliberation based on justice. And not only justice, but justice, what he's saying is dharma, which you can say is resolution or orderliness, and the other one is truth, which is coexistence. Prior to this proposal, our deliberation, whenever we're deliberating anything, okay, we're deliberating based on our liking and health and profit. Okay, so when we're making options and figuring things out, we're looking at those three as a way to deliberate and to make those options. So those are three that we have. But now, and those three are very individualistic in their lens, how much I like, what I like. Even if I look at the requirements for my body, I might need to eat a little bit more, a little bit less than someone else. All those things are variable. And so there's no universality in it. But now for the first time, with this proposal, we can recognize the necessity for justice in our behavior. And that is very definite, okay? And now we could, deliberate based on those three. So justice is having to do with recognizing, now I can recognize my relationship because now I recognize Jivan as an identity. I can recognize my relationships in terms of system. And with that, I recognize the relationships for a system. And with that, the values are going to rise, universal values are going to be to arise. Then there's going to be evaluation and then mutual fulfillment. So that's what brings the harmony and togetherness. And then we've got dharma, which is now with the rest of the environment, how we can ensure that balance. And And then the third one is coexistence, which is now I can ensure participation and coexistence through all of my interactions with the environment and with people and all of my duties and responsibilities, everything, all of my interactions, I can ensure that there's a coexistence. So now when I'm deliberating, I can recall I'm not deliberating or making decisions or seeing my options based on what is comfortable for me, but now I'm seeing the well-being of all. I'm now, for the first time, I'm starting to have that coexistence mindset that's considering the well-being of all. What is good for matter order, for plant order, for animal order, for knowledge order, and how we can ensure the continuity of system, where that well-being of all, I'm also a part of that well-being of all. So if the well-being of all is ensured, then my well-being is also ensured. So now, instead of individualistic lens, we move to a coexistence essential lens. And with that, now we could use the faculty of chintan, which is contemplation. And so if I have the perspective of justice, that leads to chintan, okay? So right now, when we see anything, if I'm looking at anything around me, whether it be a human being, a glass, anything, I'm seeing a tree, we have four bases of which we see things around us. And one of them is form, effect, and then there's intrinsic nature and innate order, okay? So right now, in the society, how we're seeing things is mostly just based on its form, what it looks like, or based on its effect. So the effect is in togetherness. Do you have two things that are together or a few entities that are together? There's an effect on each other. And now we're only seeing based on those two effects. For the first time now, we're become capable to have a clear view where I can see everything with its innate order. And innate order means it's dharma, something that is undivided. You cannot take away from that entity. So the innate orderliness of a human being, you cannot separate it. Undividedness is happiness or resolution. Every human being, no matter where you live, what your background, where you are on the planet, every human being wants to live with happiness. And that we can see happiness itself is when we are resolved. We understand every why and how. So now I can see and I not only human being, I can see everything with that innate makeup of orderliness. And then I can start to see also its participation. So in togetherness, when I'm ensuring that order, when I have order within, now I can participate in orderliness with everyone and everything around me. I can participate in a system within my family, with my neighbors, with the environment around me. So now I could now see everything with that innate orderliness and within that system. And that leads to an effect. When now I can participate in system, there's an effect. And the effect is either positive. As of now, we've seen positive effect, negative effect. And what we want to see is that balancing effect, mediating effect, which ensures the continuity of that system of participation in system. So now that we have that contemplation, we're able to have a clear view, because now I'm able to see things with not only in a limited capacity with their form and effect, but now I can see everything in its totality, because I can see the innate orderliness and its participation. And because of that, now it's arising that perspective now of justice, orderliness, and truth, okay? So that's very, very important, and that's a paradigm shift on how we can see. And then he's talking about, for that, we need an education to foster this education. We need, he's saying here, which I really like, what is an educational institution? It is a combined expression of all parents and guardians. Right now, if we think of educational institution, we think of a building, we think of maybe a principal or superintendents, and we don't really see it in light of parents and guardians and a family setup. But here he's saying educational institution is essentially parents and guardians. And what he calls, if you see the word for guardian, is one who wants all-encompassing resolution for their children, and they also engage in nourishment and protection for their child. So education, those who are educating the children, whether it be from home or whether it be a teacher, though are the guardians of the children, are the ones who's expecting resolution. And they're there because they want to see that every child becomes resolved, and they want to make sure every child can be well nourished and protected. So it's moving from an institutionalized way of seeing it towards a more parental way of seeing it, where every child I want to take responsibility for the child to ensure that they're becoming resolved. So I think that's a very beautiful way to define it, and make sure every parent and every teacher becomes the source, or the they take responsibility essentially for ensuring that every child becomes wise, and we can support them with the environment to become wise. So I think that's very beautiful on how he defines that. So let's move forward. We ourselves need to become proficient in delivering justice and produce its real life evidences. It is only when we have accomplished these two that we will be able to do justice and understand reality. In the absence of right understanding, there is no way for us to do justice. Today, not even chief justices of Supreme Court can understand justice. Then what can be said about others? Justice is the minimum capability that is needed for humane living. The evidence of justice is in the form of humane conduct. Conversely, justice cannot happen from anything short of humane conduct. With contemplation, Chintan, we have covered six activities of Jivan so far. We humans have done a great deal of analysis, vishleshan, based on like, health, and profit perspectives. Thereby, we've become successful in doing production for fulfilling many of our needs and aspirations. We also have produced things such as bombs and missiles and warships, which are not useful for human beings. These things are meaninglessness and destructive, which have been proven both logically and historically. The usefulness of things for a human being is established at the fundamental logical and behavioral levels. At the fundamental level, we humans want happiness. It is upon achieving happiness at the fundamental level that we become capable of realizing harmony in our behavior with logical consistency in our thoughts. In this way, human being becomes the evidence at the fundamental, behavioral, and logical levels. It is through logic that we do all of our activities, such as talking, reading, and writing. The meaningful logic touches the reality at its fundamental level, which is the way to successful communication among human beings. The success of communication is in making the other person touch the fundamental reality. For example, if our communication is about imparting the understanding of meaningfulness in human behavior, we would describe that the meaningfulness in human behavior is in universal human purpose of resolution, prosperity, fearlessness, and coexistential orderliness. The other person, by attentive listening and deliberation, should thereby achieve the knowledge and behavior at the fundamental level. This is how the other person should accomplish knowledge at the fundamental level through our communication. Logic is needed for imparting the fundamental level and for practicing it in behavior. So we'll just stop there for just a moment. So right now he's talking about justice. If you see in the society, there's a tendency to think about justice when we're thinking about courts, and when we're thinking about justice, we're tended to expect it somewhere outside. We're expecting it from the government or from courts. Somewhere externally, we're kind of expecting justice. But justice is for me to evidence, okay? Through my own humane conduct. And where can I evidence that? Being in a family. So that's a place where I can evidence the justice. It's not about expecting something from far out there in the courts or in the government that I have less control over, but I have control over that. I can evidence justice in my family. And it's the minimum capability that is needed for humane living. So if we want to participate in a humane system, which every human being innately has a desire for, of course, we don't have the avenue. Maybe we don't have the proper understanding to ensure it, or the proper ability to put into action. But every human being innately wants that, and justice is the minimum for that. Okay, and justice gets evidenced through our humane conduct. Okay, which is living with values, character, and ethics, which we've talked about several times, and it'll probably come up again afterwards. So he's talking now. We're talking a little bit more about contemplation, because now their activity of contemplation, which I've talked about, now we're able to see things not only with their form and their effect, but I can see them with their innateness and with their innate nature, their inner order or innate orderliness, and within their innate nature, which means their participation and togetherness. Because of that, now our deliberation will not only happen based on liking, health, and profit. Now the deliberation is happening based on justice, orderliness, and truth. And so now all of our analysis can now happen, and our logic can now happen on the basis of that. Instead of making our logic to support why I'm making this decision for my own liking, and I use my own logic to back that up. Instead, now I'm using my analysis to support the movement towards justice, orderliness, and truth. So upon understanding, okay, when we understand, now I want to execute that. I want to make proper decisions based on that, okay? I want to make proper decisions. And when I'm making proper decisions for execution, I need to first start thinking about what am I going to do, when am I going to do it, and how am I going to do it? This is the domain of analysis now. So I'm using my analysis. So for example, I want to raise children. So now I need to figure out, like, I want to raise children for what? To participate in the system. Okay, so I want them to become wise, and so they also can become and participate in the system. So now I need to figure out, what will I do for that? When do I need to do it? What is the right time to do that? And how will I do it? Okay, so that is the domain of analysis. And so it's kind of breaking it down into smaller steps of the how. How will I make it happen? Which is more the science. And for example, I want to make something. I want to grow something. Maybe I want to grow some food. I want to grow something in the garden for our prosperity purposes. So then I also need to think about, what am I going to do? When will I do it? How am I going to do it? That's using the analysis, the activity of analysis to figure that out. But now I'm using analysis in purview of justice, dharma, and truth, and logic. Now we're also using our logic, which are my mental activities, so that I can move towards resolution. Logic is very important so that I could understand everything it is. So it's those connecting the dots, because existence is coexistence. So now I need to link everything together. There's a link from one thing to the next. There's a progression. And so I need to link that progression in my own mentality so I can comprehend existence as it is. And we use logic for all the things that we're doing, as A. Nagaraji is sharing. Right now, even I'm sharing to you, I need to use some logic, some progression. First, I'm going to share this, then this, then this. So it's a whole progressive medium by which I'm using language. And when I'm using language as a tool to communicate, the idea behind communication is that I want someone else. I've understood the reality as it is. I want to help that to reach to someone else. So I use language to communicate that. Ultimately, the communication doesn't just happen through words, it happens through behavior. So someone else sees it through my behavior, then they have trust in that. They get a glimpse that, okay, that not only through language you hear it, language can give you one level of some glimpse, but now with behavior, it becomes another layer of you're starting to see it kind of in practice. So that's kind of the level when we're talking about communication. It means helping someone else to be able to see it, to reach that reality through seeing my behavior. And so we know that in Nagaraji said that there's a reality and then there's a word. So I can use words to indicate that reality, and that each word has a meaning. The reality has a meaning, and I can use a word, or I can use definitions to be able to indicate that meaning and express it to someone else, so they can get essentially from the word, and they could indicate that meaning that is inherent in the reality itself. So let's move forward from there. So I think those are important things to recall. What does it mean by communicating? What does it mean by using my logic? Right now we can use logic. We can use our logic, so we could use it towards our senses, our liking, health, and profit. And now with this proposal, we can use our logic and we can use our analysis towards our justice, orderliness, and truth. Okay? So let's move forward. So now we're on page 89. The first accomplishment from this understanding is in our getting the basis, or absolute reference, of evaluation of our own self and members of our family. This is the basis in the form of our understanding of values, relationships, and mutual fulfillment. We become capable of evidencing justice in our behavior, thereby It is only then we become worthy of calling ourselves human being. Thereafter, we become self-reliant with emergence of the following 6 merits. Number 1, self-confidence. Number 2, respect for human excellence. Number 3, balance in talent. Number 4, balance in personality. Number 5, social and behavior. Number 6, self-sustainability and occupation. It is when I discovered these 6 merits that I experienced myself to have become self-reliant. Thereby, I became capable of evidencing resolution and prosperity in my family. It is with this authenticity that I'm presenting this proposal to you. Every human being wants to lead a civil life. Justice is the minimum qualification for civility in human living. I see justice as identification of relationships' purpose, flow of values, evaluation, and mutual fulfillment. After this, I also understood that every human being is a seeker of justice from the moment of their birth. A child naturally desires to work and behave correctly, and every child naturally speaks truth. If this is the precondition of every child, then what should be the content of their education? The education should impart the understanding of truth. It should have the provision for training and practice to achieve proficiency and work in behavior, and it should instill the capability of delivering justice. If these 3 aspects are incorporated in education, then it will naturally give rise to a living tradition of humanist and right understanding. Humane tradition will not get realized before that. Justice is the starting point for the humane tradition. Most important aspect of understanding justice is recognizing human beings' eternal relationship with their environment and with other human beings. When someone makes a mistake, then where does he go to seek guidance? First, someone from his family who claims to be wise guides him and delivers justice. If no one from the family could guide him, then someone from his village may take up that responsibility. If no one in the village could deliver that, then one would naturally turn to the level of state and then to the next level. Human being has the natural tendency for seeking information. It has become evident that the world now is looking for a change. No one is clear, though, what that change is exactly. This proposal is meant to bring about that clarity. I'm going to go a little further. Education alone will result in propagation of this proposal. It needs to provision teaching of humanists. We will have to make provision for the right understanding and education if each individual has to evidence justice in their living. For this, we will need to impart study of consciousness along with science. Without understanding consciousness, we will not be able to understand existence. And without understanding existence, how will we understand its orderliness? Jivan itself is the entity that understands existence. Therefore, our education ought to include the study of Jivan. The curriculum of psychology needs to incorporate the sanskara aspect, right understanding, and study of consciousness. Consciousness in case of human being includes both sensitivity and intelligence. Philosophy needs to be taught with authenticity by giving real-life evidences. When will they teach with authenticity? It will only result in humanness in thought and conduct, and not materialism or spiritualism. Human being can become wise, and existence is always there up close for human beings achieving the right understanding. Evidence, according to me, is in our enabling other person with that what we have understood, what we have learned, and what skills we have mastered. The evidence is needed for all 3 aspects. There is no 4th aspect to evidencing. It is all right if we fall short somewhere in our learning and doing, our skills, but our understanding has to be complete in order for us to evidence. We humans have accomplished a great deal in learning and doing aspects, but we are at point 0 when it comes to understanding. Today, we consider learning and doing to be the most valuable, but all of our learning and all of our doing in the absence of right understanding could not get us any resolution or relief, and we kept getting stuck somewhere or the other. Therefore, the need has arisen in the human being for attaining self-confidence and studying the existence and its wholeness. It is only upon human beings' study and practice that their evidencing and the right understanding becomes imminent. So that was a lot. I took in a lot in that section. So what A. Nagarji is saying is, if we want to look at What is evidence of now we're able to do deliberation based on justice. We're able to see that we've being able to utilize the activity of contemplation, where now we're now seeing the well-being of all and not only seeing my own individualistic pursuit. How do we know that a child or someone is growing well and that they're able to practice or evidence justice in their behavior? There are 6 traits of a human being, and there's 6, or you can say traits or 6 merits. And these 6 traits are often used when we say education. What would we want to see that shows that a child has been or someone has been well educated? If we look at these 6 traits, then this is kind of our verification point. This is what we want to be able to see in every human being. So when we have this education based on consciousness development through value education, these are kind of like our core competencies of education. So I'll take a moment and go through each of them. So the first one is self-confidence, or you can say inner trust. And that emerges out of understanding the reality not only understanding, but understanding the reality as it is and being able to evidence that. So essentially, I have knowledge, wisdom, and science. I'm able to, obviously, and if I'm understanding and evidencing, that means all my 10 activities have been activated, and I'm also evidencing that. So I have realization and I have evidence of it. So now I'm living as a system, which is orderliness within, and I'm able to participate in the entire system. And when I'm living like that, I feel a sense of confidence. I feel a sense of trust in myself. Respect for excellence in this process. Now, when I'm participating in the system, I'm living as a system. For that to happen, I need to recognize excellence. So there are people already in this process who are living within the system, who are already order within, they're already a system within and participating in the system. And I also want to live in a system. So inherently, I'm also want to ensure that system. So I'm able to recognize those people who are already living that way. The people who are already living with orderliness within and participating in the system, we call that excellence. They're living with excellence. And that is a sense of respect when I'm able to recognize it. Right now in the society that we're living in, people were not even clear about what is excellence. So in the name of excellence, we look at specialization, uniqueness, someone who's able to do something that no one else is able to do that's very unique. So you could be this very famous filmmaker or a singer, a songwriter. A lot of people are looking up to those people. What we're talking about, excellence is something that is not unique or specialized, but this is something that can become available to any human being, and every human being has it right and can move towards becoming excellent. So when I recognize other people who are living with excellence, I feel a sense of respect, and that gives me the inclination that I can also move towards it. And so in many ways, we could use the word proper evaluation here, because now I can proper evaluate what is excellence. And because I'm able to accept that excellence, because I can see it in other human beings, then I myself can start moving towards that. So the next one is balance. I'm going to talk about balance and personality, balance between talents and personality together. So once we now have trust within oneself and we have also respect for excellence, now I can ensure balance between my talent and personality. Balance, if we talk about talent, that means someone who's living with knowledge, wisdom, and science. In the society today, we use the word talent to feel like someone who's doing something, you've become very skilled and you're very talented in piano and any particular skill. We're saying here that talent is everyone should be able to have talent, which is living with knowledge, wisdom, and science. And so now I have that, and now I could ensure balance point, because as a person, I have a personality. So that personality has to do with my food, my routine, or my lifestyle, how I lead my day, and my behavior. Right now, how I choose my food, my routine, and my behavior is not necessarily aligned with any larger purpose or common goal. I just maybe setting it more out of my individualistic way of thinking. But now I can see the reality as it is. I have knowledge, wisdom, and science. So now I align my choices of food, my routine, and my behavior align with that. So my routine is now there to support me to become resolved. And food becomes an expression of that as well. And my behavior as well is now being invested so in togetherness we can participate in the system. So when we're talking about balance, it's taking that knowledge, wisdom, and science, and now we're aligning that with our personality, with our day-to-day living. We're aligning the two and they become in balance. And then sociality and behavior has to do with, now we're being able to evidence a system. What is the system? I'm able to become an evidence of undivided society and universal orderliness. And that means I'm able to evidence definite humane conduct, which means, again, values, character, and ethics. So values, again, I'm recognizing my relationships in terms of system, no longer for just merely sensitivity-based relationships. I'm engaging relationships for participating in system, recognizing the values, evaluation, and mutual fulfillment. And characters plays a very important role here as well, because now I need to, there are three things which we've talked about very briefly, but character has to do with I'm commitment in my relationships. So my relationships, whether I see for participating in relationship, I commit to all my relationships. And all my relationships, I can definitely recognize my definite responsibilities and duties, and I commit to them. And that brings about character. And then the same thing, self-wealth. So instead of exploiting the environment, I'm able to utilize my own prosperity, I use my own physical labor for participating in prosperity while ensuring the cyclical balance. So I'm able to invest that properly. And the other one is kind work and behavior. So that's the character. And then ethics, right use of my body, mind, and my wealth. So now I'm able to live that way, which means I'm participating in the system. And that itself is sociality and behavior. And then self-sustaining an occupation has to do with human beings. We have basic needs, food, clothing, shelter. We have aspirational needs, which I won't get into so much now, but needs to ensure the societal progress. And we can fulfill all of those if we engage in physical labor. We engage in physical labor by ensuring the sustainability of the environment, the cyclical balance, and by that, I'm ensuring the prosperity in my family. So if you have all those 6 traits, that's kind of a verification that I myself am able to evidence participation. I myself am order within. I can participate in the system. I can evidence what it means to participate in a humane tradition. And that evidence that I myself have been educated, not just been schooled, but I myself have been educated. So those are the 6 points. And I think they're very, very important. And for now, with those 6 points, those innate gifts of a child can now be manifested. Okay, so not only it becomes a wish, but now it could be actually manifested in practice. The other thing before we close up today is education. Yeah, A. Nagaraj is saying that education needs to become complete. Right now, our current schooling system, doesn't have a very definite purpose or definite aim for humanity. We haven't properly understood or done a study of human beings. So in the name of that, we have very subject-focused education, math, science, social studies, and they're all fragmented. But those are not being invested towards the human aim. So to make the education complete, there are things that we need to add in. So A. Nagaraj is saying is that we need to have science with consciousness. Science today is very body-based. It's materialism focused. And it's focused on like mechanism, machine-based. And we're using machines to kind of evidence that. But we're saying in absence of understanding myself as a jivan, then there's no science. Science cannot emerge properly. So in order for science to emerge properly, we need study of consciousness. Because if we study consciousness properly, then we can also see that there's a coexistence. And then we could now use science as a tool to participate harmoniously in the coexistence, okay? So same thing, then we have psychology with sanskar. So instead of just psychology, sanskar has to do with right understanding. So when we're trying to understand the mindset, we need proper understanding. We need the mindset that's not going to lead to individualism. It's going to lead to the coexistence mentality. So we need to have psychology with knowledge, wisdom, and science, and a psychology that brings about humane consciousness. So we could move towards that. And then he was talking about philosophy with authenticity. Right now, someone can say, I'm teaching philosophy and it's just merely a lecture. Philosophy itself is my living, and you cannot separate the two. My living is my philosophy. So philosophy needs to be there with authenticity and evidencing. So those are 3 points he addressed here. A. Nagaraji, in other documents, he's also talking about economics with ethics. That means we're talking about economics while we're also considering conservation of the natural grandeur as well as the conscious grandeur, sociology with humane culture and civilization, political science with conservation and the growth of humanists, history and geography with human being and humanists, and literature with reality. So I won't get into the details of that right now, but ultimately, these are the things that are required to complete our education and move towards humanizing this education that we have. And then he also talked about evidencing whatever it is that human beings we've understood, whatever it is that we've learned, and whatever things we've mastered in terms of skills that needs to be passed on. And that in Hindu we call upkar, or a benevolent act. Maybe we can call that in English. He's saying thus far human beings have achieved zero understanding. We've put so much effort for our skills, but we haven't done much in the domain of understanding. And that's where education needs to come into that, so we could humanize education and ensure a humane tradition. So I'm just checking on the time here. I'm wondering if I should stop here because I took on quite a big section before moving forward, because then it will require more conversation and the next section is quite long. I'll just say that in coming to Madhyas Darshan, I discovered it through my passion and my engagement in the area of education, because I had studied education and I was seeking alternatives in education. And I was seeking to understand myself, seeking for alternatives in education. I wanted to participate in a more meaningful education. And when I went to India, fortunately enough, I went to an organization called Society for Integrated Development of the Himalayas. And there, I arrived coincidentally at the right time, and they were sharing this workshop. And that's where, after that, I had met my husband, whose name was Mahendra, and we, carved out a path in light of this understanding. We both decided we wanted to live according to this, strive to understand it and to live according to it. And I've met A. Nagaraji in the whole process. But my whole drive that brought me to India was to understand a more meaningful living and also understand alternatives in education. And because I myself had engaged in education for many years and saw the necessity for it. And I found, after exploring this, because fortunately enough, when I got this proposal, I was able to find that whatever I was looking for in education, I was able to see that this is a very complete, holistic education that really touches upon what it means to be a human being, a good human being, and who can participate in a humane tradition and ensure the continuity of that humane tradition and continuity of the planet. So all the things I was innately wanting, but didn't have the understanding or the ability to make happen, I found that this proposal was able to move me in that direction towards ensuring a complete education. And now my husband, myself, and our family members are engaged and trying in this consciousness development through value education for our own children, and trying to establish and not enrich, but to establish a model that we could hand off to that next generation. Exactly what A. Nagaraji is saying. He wants to hand this to the next generation. We're working on in such a way where anywhere across the world, people can receive this education and not only see its necessity, but so that we can ensure a humane tradition for the next generation. So I'll end on that point. I feel very fortunate and very grateful to be a part of this process of understanding and striving to live, but also be engaged in this education process. And I express my gratitude once again to A. Nagaraj for that. And once again, thank you everyone for being with me here today. And we will continue tomorrow. Tomorrow will be my last day of sharing. And I think we'll end on that point. So I wish everyone a wonderful evening or a great morning or day. And namaste to everyone, and goodbye. Oh, might take me a moment to close it. I kind of lost my spot of how to close it. Oh, I found it. Goodbye, everyone.